On this Thursday night, as the U.S. president takes his campaign-style show on the road, Washington is gripped by a mystery. Who wrote it? That scathing New York Times op-ed from a secret White House insider. We'll look at the high-profile scramble to deny it, the possible fallout from it, and all with the clock ticking to midterms, exactly 2 months away.
Also tonight, the politics of pipelines, the protracted NAFTA process, and the state of the opposition. All of that is on the table. Well, good thing the At Issue gang is back for a new season with everyone around the table. It's almost as exciting as the first day of school. This is The National. To borrow a recent phrase, U.S. President Donald Trump is full of fire and fury, incensed over an anonymous claim that his presidency is being micromanaged behind his back. And you can bet that will be a dominant topic at his rally tonight in Billings, Montana. Trump is there nominally to support a friendly Republican candidate. But if recent history is any guide, his focus may quickly turn to his perceived enemies. Now, for all the comfort and support Trump gets from his base at these rallies, they don't provide him any hard answers. And as our Paul Hunter reports, we're no closer to the big one he wants.
Mr. President, who wrote the op-ed?
Who wrote it? Went the unanswered question to Donald Trump today, and what's more,
Who's in charge of the White House?
who's running the place? Who's the author of that column in yesterday's New York Times, credited to an anonymous senior White House official who labels Trump impetuous, ineffective, and amoral, reckless enough that so-called resistors in his inner circle now act behind his back for the good of the country? It was the question of the day. Did you write it? To the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. No. To Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
It's not mine.
CBC's Katie Simpson put it to Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
Do you know who the author of the op-ed is?
He didn't reply. Yes, there's even a Las Vegas odds-on favorite, Vice President Mike Pence, who today also denied he wrote it.
Well, I think it's a disgrace.
The Times today gave no hint about the author.
This is The Daily.
But its podcast, The Daily, interviewed editor James Dow, who communicated directly with the Trump insider.
I would guess that this person has reached a breaking point.
On whether Dow thinks the writer wants to comfort Americans by underlining some insiders are resisting Trump, or whether the op-ed is a call to action or even an atonement.
That's a great question, and I cannot answer definitively.
Mm-hmm.
My guess, it's a little bit of all those things.
And yet, say some, the op-ed itself may change little in the minds of voters.
This is an electorate that's really seen quite a lot already in terms of this administration. People's opinions about Trump are pretty much baked in a positive or negative direction.
Or, as a Republican senator put it today, despite all the public denials, a bigger issue might well be finding a Trump insider who couldn't write that op-ed. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
So some other heavyweight names there, but others have also denied being the author, including Defense Secretary James Mattis, National Security Advisor John Bolton. But they are not alone. If there really is a so-called resistance movement at work in the highest levels of the administration, nobody is admitting to being a member. The denials just keep coming. Dan Coats does not get along with Trump and is soon to leave his post as the Director of National Intelligence. But he says, no, it wasn't him, as does Trump's long-suffering Attorney General. Despite months of public potshots from the president, Jeff Sessions, too, denies writing it. Even First Lady Melania Trump has said that, no, this was not her doing. Not that many thought it was. Still, it's notable that she felt compelled to say so. Well, somebody wrote this thing, and whether they want to cop to it or not, it's having a big impact right now, and who knows how widely its effects might actually reach. Let's get into that with Philip Bump. He's a national correspondent with The Washington Post. Good to see you, Philip. I would imagine that the best game in Washington right now is trying to figure out who wrote this. Are we any closer tonight to knowing that?
No, I don't think so. And we've had this spate of people who've come out and said that they did not write it, but that's exactly what the person who wrote it probably would say if asked. Where there's someone dug up today this great Wall Street Journal article from 1974 in which Deep Throat, Mark Felt, was asked, "Are you Deep Throat?" And he said, "No, I'm not. I made the Wall Street Journal." That's what's going to happen in this case, too. And I don't think we're any closer to finding out who actually did do it.
So how is this act of resistance then being perceived in Washington? Is it being considered an honorable thing or quite the opposite?
Well, it certainly is mixed, as with most things in Washington. But I would say the general consensus is that this person should have or should shortly identify themselves, identify what their position is, to answer some of the questions about, how significant their role is, about who else they may have spoken with, how deep this resistance thing goes within the administration. There's a sense that by being anonymous, they sort of took an easier path forward than they might otherwise have done so. But obviously, all of that sort of fades in the background compared with the question, first of all, of who it actually was, and then second of all, the significance of what was actually said and how deep this sentiment goes within the administration.
Okay, so what about the possible impact then of this? Obviously, the president isn't going anywhere, but could there be a political price to pay in the midterms, for instance? Is this the kind of thing that would influence voters?
I'm not terribly convinced that it will. I mean, this election for Trump's base, I think we talk about them all the time. They're certainly energized in support of President Trump. The question is whether or not they're actually going to translate that into coming out in November. But what I think what this does do is it is the first time we have heard from someone in the administration, albeit we don't know who exactly it is, but we've heard from someone in the administration that all of the stories, all of the reporting is essentially true. That Bob Woodward's new book, that those stories, if not true in every single specific detail, are broadly true about what it's like inside the White House. I think that will help energize Trump's opponents and, more importantly, energize some independents who are a little wary about Trump's administration.
Okay, Philip Bump, thanks for your perspective tonight. Appreciate it a lot.
Of course.
Still to come tonight on The National, celebrations across India after its Supreme Court strikes down a law that criminalizes gay sex. Could that cause other countries to change course?
Plus, it's At Issue Night, a special supersized At Issue just a few weeks before Parliament returns. That's coming up.
Can't come soon enough. But first, things are tense between Russia and the West, even more so today, as Russia faced a barrage of criticism at the UN Security Council over the poisoning of that former Russian spy in England. As Thomas Daigle tells us, the United States is pressing Moscow to hand the suspects over.
Something caught their eye. The two men accused of a chemical weapon attack apparently checking out vintage coins through the window. This video, the first to show just how relaxed they looked on the streets of Salisbury.
This is on the main route that goes to the railway station. It could be they were just killing time.
Though what they were allegedly there for,
the Security Council is called to order,
led to this, a UN Security Council meeting.
We have clear evidence of Russian state involvement in what happened in Salisbury.
And more denials from Moscow. Russia's ambassador called it a theater of the absurd. Britain claims officers from Russia's GRU intelligence agency carried out the attack with likely approval from the Kremlin.
The GRU is a major intelligence service belonging to the military that answers to the defense minister who answers to President Putin. So he is ultimately responsible for his actions of his government.
Their case got the backing of Canada, the US, France, and Germany, issuing a rare joint statement to say, we have full confidence in the British assessment.
Why doesn't the Russian government turn these two murderers over to British authorities?
Russia struggled to poke holes in the British case, pointing to these two images showing the suspects arriving at a London airport. The timestamps are identical. Russia sees that as image manipulation, except Britain says the men walked down different arrival halls.
I don't know if the ambassador has been to Gatwick Airport. We have been to Gatwick Airport. There are multiple identical corridors through which people can go.
Investigators are said to be focusing on the suspects' bags and what they may have contained. This backpack isn't seen when they leave, and this suitcase appears out of nowhere. Authorities have built profiles of these two, but acknowledge there's still plenty left to learn. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, London.
Staying overseas, a historic victory today for India's LGBT community after the country's top court overturned a ban on gay sex. In city after city, scenes like this, laughter, cheering, hugging. The rain, no match for high spirits. In Mumbai, the celebration turned into an impromptu victory parade. Like the mood here, the Supreme Court's decision was unanimous, striking down the law that dates back more than 150 years.
This was long due, and I'm really glad the Supreme Court finally gave us a legal recognition and got us out from the category of criminals, because there's nothing wrong about love.
And that sentiment was very much reflected in the wording of the ruling. Take a look. They quoted Leonard Cohen from The Ashes of the Gay Democracy is Coming, and also from the 19th century German philosopher Goethe, I am what I am, so take me as I am. And as Ron Charles tells us, that celebratory spirit is spreading far and wide, reaching all the way here to people in Canada.
Workers at this New Delhi hotel danced in celebration. The hotel's owner, Kashav Suri, is an LGBT activist who helped bring the case to court.
Good, it's brilliant. And it's brilliant because finally we get a voice.
That voice was heard around the world today. In Canada, it lit up Haran Vijayanathan's phone with messages from other members of the country's South Asian LGBT community.
I know it's been a long fight, so to actually listen to the comments being made on Facebook and Twitter and watching some of the videos and just the jubilation of Indians, across the world, it was really, really heartwarming and nice.
But he acknowledges now that the law is scrapped, there's still a lot of work to do to change attitudes.
It's going to take maybe a few generations before India gets to where Canada is socially. But even again, like I said, Canada is not 100% there either.
This award-winning series of documentaries chronicles how LGBT activists fought against India's gay sex law. The Canadian filmmaker says 150 years ago, India was the first of Britain's colonies to have the law imposed, but not the last.
That law was carried in the valises of the various colonial administrators throughout the British Empire. And all over the world today, there are active criminal court cases that are challenging these laws.
She expects courts in those other countries to refer to the Indian Supreme Court decision and hopes celebratory scenes like these eventually play out in former British colonies around the world. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
And that's an important point to pick up on, because for many LGBT people around the world, the struggle for this kind of legal decision is very much ongoing. In 13 places, the punishment for same-sex sexual activity is death. In more than 70 others, homosexual acts are criminal acts. But in the last year, there have been some changes. Trinidad and Tobago's High Court is expected to rule this month on whether to decriminalize gay sex. When it comes to gay marriage, Australia legalized it last December. And just last month, Costa Rica ruled it should be made legal within the next year and a half.
Some big news from the world of international high fashion today. Burberry says it'll stop sending perfectly usable clothes and accessories to the incinerator simply because they can't sell them. And as you may not know, that practice is actually pretty common across the retail industry. As Salima Shifji reports, the debate is on luxury brand waste.
A staple on the world's runways, Burberry had a major misstep this summer. Its annual report let slip that many unsold items were burned, more than $48 million worth, all to avoid them ending up severely marked down, thus weakening the brand. The backlash on social media was swift. Burberry shamed with the hashtag Burnberry and calls for a boycott. Today, an about face. Modern luxury means being socially and environmentally responsible, said the CEO. And so Burberry will no longer burn unsold products. Instead, we'll focus on recycling and donating them.
The timing actually makes a heck of a lot of sense. Announcing at Fashion Week where they're going to get maximum exposure and coincidentally not letting it drag out forever.
At this showroom for Toronto Fashion Week, the news spread quickly.
Because they're the first to do it, we're going to be cynical and be skeptical that they're just doing this as like a PR move. But I think as a whole, designers are more conscious of like what they're doing to the environment now.
We deconstruct them and we make new pieces like this.
Adam Taubenfliegel shows off his denim line made of recycled jeans. He doesn't care what prompted Burberry's decision.
If social media calling out irresponsible practices motivates you to make better changes, then that's fantastic.
The problem is, burning the clothes is easier, and some government policies even reward it.
If you are a retailer and you're importing garments to sell in Canada and you don't sell them for whatever reason, you will receive a credit on your next duty if you landfill or incinerate it.
She says that needs to change, but so do shopping habits. High demand drives overproduction, leaving items stuck on shelves waiting to be burned. Salima Shibji, CBC News, Toronto.
The fashion industry is actually the second largest polluter in the world after oil, and environmentalists have been quick to criticize Burberry. Yet that company is actually far from alone. The Swiss watchmaker behind Cartier and Montblanc has destroyed $750 million worth of designer timepieces in the last 2 years. The company bought back unsold watches from jewelers to stop them from being sold at a discount. Meanwhile, H&M has been sending unwanted clothing to a Swedish power plant to be burned to create energy as an alternative to coal. The fast fashion retailer stressed it didn't incinerate any usable clothing, just products infested with mold or contaminated with lead.
And we are live tracking a number of other developing stories tonight, including a manhunt underway in St. Catharines, Ontario, after 3 people were shot.
We can tell you that the full strength of the Niagara Regional Police is involved right now. We're doing everything we can to resolve the situation safely for everybody involved.
The shooting happened downtown at around 3:30 this afternoon. Of the 3 people shot, at least 1 is in critical condition. And police say there are 2 male suspects on the loose. Young black men, they believe, maybe in their early 20s. We're still trying to find out what the link might have been, if there was one at all, between the shooters and the victims. Secret documents were released today at the confirmation hearing of U.S. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. One of them, a draft op-ed from 2003 in which Kavanaugh said he's not sure Roe v. Wade is settled law because the Supreme Court could overrule it. When asked about it today, he described that landmark abortion case as important precedent, but that hasn't eased concern among critics. Kavanaugh was handpicked by Donald Trump, and Trump has strongly suggested he wants Roe v. Wade overturned.
We think that this whole thing got blown up beyond proportions.
That's one of nearly 70 former New Democrat politicians openly criticizing federal leader Jagmeet Singh. They've signed a letter accusing him of making a mistake by refusing to let MP Aaron Weir back into federal caucus. Weir was expelled last spring over harassment allegations. He completed training and asked to return, but this week the party leader said he did not think Weir would change his ways.
So we're going to talk about all of that and more coming up because it's at issue night. A special double dose of Canada's favorite political panel is coming up.
And charismatic, macho, charming, just some of the words being used to describe Burt Reynolds. More on his life and Hollywood legacy just ahead.
Plus, TIFF has taken over downtown TO, but new this year is Netflix taking over TIFF. Eli Glasser finds out what the streaming shakeup means for the film fests in the future.
Netflix has been extraordinarily, wonderfully hands-off in terms of the creative process. They give you the money, they believe in you as artists, and they let you do your thing, and that was a glorious experience.
In Alberta, about 1 in 4 kids attends Catholic school. That's more than 160,000 students. Now, we're not talking about private religious schools here. We're talking about a whole system of Catholic education, fully funded by taxpayers to the tune of $1.6 billion a year and complete with separately elected school trustees. Only 3 provinces still have education systems like this: Ontario, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Why? It has to do with history, politics, and the Constitution. Check out Section 93 of our country's founding legal document. It guarantees the right to separate religious schools to any class of persons who already had them when Canada became a country. This was a way to keep the two dominant religious groups at the time happy. It meant Catholics and Protestants could each educate their kids according to their own beliefs, even if they found themselves in a religious minority in a particular area. But wait, you might say, Alberta wasn't a province at Confederation, so why does this apply to us? Well, the Alberta Act of 1905, which created the province, included a similar provision. It guarantees education rights that existed at the date of the passing of this act. That mainly means Catholic schools, but it also means Protestants can have their own separate schools in Catholic-dominated areas. It does not apply to other faith groups, however, who didn't come to Alberta in large numbers until much later. Fast forward more than a century, and this is still the law of the land. The same doesn't apply, though, in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, and BC, which didn't have separate systems when they joined Canada. The other three provinces did have separate systems for a while, but opted to get rid of them. Manitoba did it way back in 1890. Quebec did it in 1997, and Newfoundland and Labrador became the latest to do it in 1998, following a referendum on the issue. In Alberta, there hasn't been the same push to abolish the Catholic system, but in late 2017, Alberta bishops warned those calls are growing ever louder.
Well, the stars are out on the red carpet tonight as the Toronto International Film Festival kicks off. And for the first time ever, a Netflix feature will open the festival. Eli Glasner is there, and as he explains, it just goes to show you how streaming services are shaking up Hollywood.
At first glance, this may look like a typical TIFF carpet, the glitz and the glam, the arrival of stars such as Chris Pine. But watch the trailer for TIFF's opening film, and you'll notice something new. The Outlaw King, brought to you by Netflix.
Netflix has been extraordinarily hands-off in terms of the creative process. They give you the money, they believe in you as artists, and they let you do your thing.
Outlaw King is just one of 8 Netflix films screening here at TIFF. It's part of a massive push by the streaming service. In 2018 alone, Netflix is spending $13 billion US on new content. Whether it's funding film festival fodder or the latest Michael Bay shoot-'em-up, Netflix is giving traditional Hollywood studios a run for their money.
They are counter-programming in terms of dollars for the level of story and the level of budget, but at the same time creating another tier, as you mentioned, with all of these big name, fabulous talents in order to compete head-to-head with the studios.
And it's not just the big screen. With nominations for The Crown, Stranger Things, and more, Netflix beat out HBO at the Emmys this year, leading the pack with 112 nominations. In Canada, production companies are already benefiting from Netflix's commitment to fund $500 million in new productions.
We've just changed history, and I thought that'd be a bigger deal.
Travelers is a sci-fi series shot in Vancouver starring Eric McCormack. After the Showcase Network dropped the series, Netflix stepped in to fully fund the new season.
Netflix has sort of become Hollywood's waiting room, that lobby. And you go in there, I've been in there, and George Clooney's sitting across from me, Seth Rogen, Jane Lynch, like, it's staggering. So I think in that capacity, you realize what you're competing with. And you really have to sort of elevate your game.
But with 125 million subscribers and growing, other companies are now rushing into the streaming space. Apple is spending $1 billion on original programming, signing deals with Oprah Winfrey and more. Amazon is premiering Homecoming, its new TV series starring Julia Roberts, at TIFF, while Disney is launching its own Netflix rival next year. The convenience of watching what he wants when he wants is why Patrick O'Rourke is part of a growing generation who never paid for cable. But with monthly subscriptions to Crave, Netflix, and more, he's already noticing the pressure on his pocketbook.
I had a couple live TV services that I was accessing with the VPN that got very expensive, and I decided that maybe I didn't really need those, and I kind of cut those down. So I think I've already hit that point.
As more and more Canadians subscribe to streaming services, they'll be facing the same conundrum, a growing universe of content with a monthly price to match. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
still ahead on the national, NAFTA, pipelines, a looming federal election, sort of. It's going to be a busy year in politics, and if I haven't talked about it enough and you don't know, our favorite gang is here to talk about all of this. At Issue is next.
Plus, Hollywood and Hollywood North are mourning Burt Reynolds tonight. There's a lot to say about his life and legacy, but first, have a listen to how some TIFF goers reacted to that news.
He was a legendary artist, like some amazing movies. A lot of guys looked up to him, and he will definitely be missed for sure.
Long and short, though, Burt Reynolds was an icon, and I'm very sad to hear that he's died.
He was a character, and Hollywood loves characters, and he'll be loved, I'm sure, for a time to come.
Most people had never heard of NXIVM until this happened.
Allison Mack. She has been charged with sex trafficking.
The FBI arrested the group's leader, as well as Allison Mack. And over several months, a number of charges were laid, including sex trafficking, forced labor, and racketeering conspiracy. And all hell broke loose.
Mack was with the alleged cult leader when he was arrested in Mexico.
NXIVM has been called a terrifying cult, a sex cult, a pyramid scheme, and even a group bent on world domination. But what is NXIVM? Here's the story of the group's rise and fall. NXIVM started in 1998 in Albany, New York, and it claims to be a self-improvement group, and it helps people with their issues and gain success. The ultimate goal is to achieve an enlightened state, something that's called fully integrated. So far, of course, the group's leader is the only one who's achieved that state. It's also a multi-level marketing company. People pay money to take courses, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, and you can make money by getting other people to sign up. The group has attracted rich and famous people, including heiresses Sarah and Claire Bronfman, Smallville actresses Allison Mack and Kristen Kruk, and Hawaii Five-0 actress Grace Park, though Kruk and Park have since left. But some former members say the group is actually centered on the appetites and powers of the group's leader, Keith Raniere, who the NXIVM faithful call Vanguard. If you want to understand NXIVM, you have to try and understand Keith Raniere.
Our main belief is to have people experience more joy in their lives.
This is him talking about NXIVM.
And from that, all sorts of interesting effects appear to happen.
So according to Raniere, he's one of the smartest people in the world. He claims to have an IQ of 240. He says he has 147 patents. He has degrees in math, biology, and physics. He has a minor in psychology and philosophy, and he's an expert in computer science. He's written 2 books, one with a foreword from the Dalai Lama. NXIVM isn't the first multi-level marketing scheme that Raniere started. In 1990, he started something called Consumers Byline, which is essentially a discount shopping club. It was shut down, though Raniere did not admit any fault. A few years later, he started NXIVM.
I'm very devilish, and I think I'm probably the worst coach in the world because I'm just a demon.
NXIVM claims to be a self-help group, but according to some people that left, that's not the whole story. Some people say that after they left, NXIVM went after them in the courts for speaking out. And some of the most serious allegations in the FBI indictments have to do with a secret group linked to NXIVM called DOS. Some of the women who joined DOS say they believed it was a secret group for women's empowerment. DOS is an acronym for the Latin phrase Dominus Obsequious Sororium, which loosely translates to master over the slave women. In DOS, you were called a slave and you served under your master. And if you recruited others, you became their master. In order to join, women had to give over collateral to prove they were committed. Some women gave nude photos or taped confessions of damaging secrets. If they quit, some people feared their collateral would be released. And in what many people find the strangest part, in the initiation ceremony, women got branded. One woman says that she only found out at the ceremony that the design would be burned into her skin. She left NXIVM after she realized that the design appeared to include the initials of KR for Keith Raniere and AM for Allison Mack. The FBI says that some of the women in DOS were being instructed to have sex with Raniere. Since the story broke, NXIVM has suspended all activities, and Raniere and Mack have pleaded not guilty. But some former members are worried about what will happen next, and if the company will still come after them. Check out the complete podcast, Escaping NXIVM, at cbc.ca/.
The House House rose in late June, and politicians quickly fled Ottawa for the land of photo ops and barbecues. The warm weather, though, didn't stop the government from announcing a summer cabinet shuffle. Some MPs became ministers, and others were moved around. Skip ahead to early August. There was that tweet that set off a diplomatic spat with Saudi Arabia and all the retaliations that followed. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh announced he would be running in a yet-to-be-called by-election in Burnaby South. And then, just days before the start of the Conservative Party convention, Maxime Bernier started tweeting about diversity again and again until he actually quit the party.
This party is too intellectually and morally corrupt to be reformed.
He is more interested in advancing his personal profile than advancing conservative principles.
As if things weren't busy enough for the end of summer, throw President Trump in the mix.
They used to call it NAFTA. We're going to call it the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement.
That news of a U.S. and Mexico trade deal sent Canadian officials rushing down to Washington. There were a lot of meetings, but still no deal. And then a decision from the Federal Court of Appeals effectively halting the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion for now. That didn't sit well with the Alberta Premier.
Until the federal government gets its act together, Alberta is pulling out of the federal climate plan.
And that brings us to this week. Notley and Trudeau met to talk pipelines, and the NAFTA talks, well, they continue in Washington.
No NAFTA is better than a bad NAFTA deal for Canadians, and that's what we're going to stay with.
So that's what happened while At Issue was away. Just a few things, but we are back and we've got a few things to talk about. Thankfully, Andrew Coyne, Chantal Hébert, Shachi Kurl, and Paul Wells are all here with me in studio in Toronto. Good to see everybody. I actually had forgotten there was a cabinet shuffle, so it was one of those kinds of summers. Very busy. We're going to start with NAFTA because it's the issue that's still burning, bubbling, whatever along, and we still don't really know whether the government's going to be able to pull this off. So I'll start with you, Andrew, on this one. Has the government managed this effectively so far? Is there anything else that they should or could be doing?
It's hard to say they've managed it effectively. I think Donald Trump and the views that he represents on alternate Wednesdays would challenge anybody, and his mercurial personality, the people around him, all those things would be challenged to any government, any set of negotiations. But I think you would say it's not like much of what they've done has really helped matters. I think to bringing forward that progressive social agenda, for example, as if that was ever going to have any useful part of these negotiations.
Stuff about women and Indigenous people.
Lovely ideas, but it just was not practical in these talks. I think they've been firmer on some issues that I wish they would yield on. Certainly the retaliatory tariffs, I would say, have not served interest well. You can debate how well they've managed Trump himself. All that being said, we don't know what's going to happen. And if they do manage to pull out of the fire some kind of agreement that is not awful, and I think that's the best we can hope for, is not awful, then they'll look better than they do right now.
We don't know, I think, is the operative sentence. And it's really hard to analyze how we get to somewhere when we don't know if it's nowhere or somewhere, or what is the preferred course. I have yet to meet anyone, and there are many qualified people who have spoken about this file, who have offered me any indication that they could have done a lot better. And I give the government credit for so far having managed to not have Canada negotiate with Canada as it negotiates with the United States. And that's an operation that is not easy. When President Trump sent that notice to Congress about the Mexico-U.S. deal on Friday, he got a lot of pushback from unions, from the Chamber of Commerce, from people in Congress. Justin Trudeau did not get a lot of pushback in this country, and he briefed just about everyone. There are lots of people he briefed, Premier of Ontario, to name just one, who have no reason to do anything nice to him. And I think you have to give the government credit for that.
I mean, Andrew Scheer sort of veered into that last week. I don't know how successful it was, but yeah.
Yeah, but since the Prime Minister briefed the premiers,
nothing else.
It has been radio silence to the despair of some of us who thought they had good sources.
So that's right. That is true, actually. So what about, though, that moment where Chrystia Freeland finds herself in Europe doing various speeches, finds out there's an agreement or at least a handshake deal between Mexico and the U.S. and has to rush back? Is that an indication that they weren't, I don't know, that they weren't aware that it was that close? Or what does that tell us, if anything?
She's been on the file for a year and a half. I mean, there's days when she's going to be somewhere besides that
that reporter's alley in Washington, and having to hop on a flight is not the worst. Shachi and I did it today, and it didn't kill us. We know this much. Donald Trump campaigned for the presidency, repeatedly calling NAFTA the worst deal in history. He didn't even say the worst trade deal. I mean, it was worse apparently than all the hockey trades in history. And a year and a half later, NAFTA is still the rule set by which trade is governed across North America. Churchill said there's nothing more exhilarating than to be shot at without result. It's not entirely exhilarating because we're still getting shot at. There's still some chance that the next bullet will hit, and that, you know, this president, who's in the worst crisis week of his presidency, will decide that he needs to cancel NAFTA to change the channel. I mean, that's still a possibility. But for a year and a half, that trade deal has remained in place. It's not nothing.
So as I think about the next 13, 14 months and how all of this then plays out in front of the electorate, in many ways, notwithstanding maybe a foreign minister being perceived to be caught off guard, look at what's happened in Washington in the last week. Every time we think that the White House has punched its ticket to crazy town, it takes a detour to crazier town. All of that bodes very well for the Prime Minister. For him, at the end of the day, I suspect that selling this deal may be more important to Canadians and the way he sells it than the actual substance of it. We gave on this, we got on that. That will end up taking a backseat to being able to say, I fought Trump. I stood up to him. I demonstrated that I was swinging for the fences. And on things like dispute resolution, when he says, look, we can't trust Trump, therefore we need these things, we need that red line, that is a resonant message.
But if the reason that we keep NAFTA is because somebody took a piece of paper off the president's desk when he wanted to rip it up, I mean, how much credit then can you take?
But that is like saying, should we also feel guilty because the president is acting irrationally? We have a government that is negotiating with people who are not, we can't vouch that they're seriously negotiating much of anything, and who are in a crisis. It's their crisis, not ours.
And we're in a relatively, we have to remind ourselves, we're in a relatively strong position in a couple of ways. One is that Trump himself cannot simply snap his fingers and cancel.
It's not all
go through the Congress. So we've got power in Washington. Secondly, you know, we traded with the Americans for 120 years before there was a free trade agreement. We would still trade with them after a NAFTA. We just wouldn't trade as efficiently. So it's not the end of the world, even if the worst case happens and NAFTA gets torn up. We would still survive as a country.
Okay, I want to switch gears before I run out of time to pipelines, because that was the other part of what I think everyone was agreed was a bad week for the Trudeau government. I'm not sure it was the worst week, but certainly a very challenging one. What do they do next here, Paul? Because they have not only a lot of money, our money, riding on this, but a lot of political capital too, and they do seem to be, I don't know, stuck for now anyway.
Yeah. Well, as regards the court decision that was so upsetting for them, they've got a few options, and there's actually nothing to stop them from pursuing every option at once. They can appeal to the Supreme Court. They can come up with a sort of legislative patch to try and kick the approval process forward. And they can throw together an expedited but slightly more serious consultation and environmental assessment process. And as I say, they can do all of those at once.
That's a good point.
But in the meantime, this grand bargain that was at the center of the Trudeau political offer in 2015, we can do energy exports and the environment. We can be better at both, and there don't have to be any losers. It's starting to look like that's not the case. That people who are against pipelines don't accept that you cancel 2 pipelines and then pass a third. And the coalition against serious climate change action is growing.
Or it's just much harder to do than they expected.
Yeah, well, but you could argue that in the case of the grand bargain, it was already in trouble before that court ruling on Trans Mountain with the BC government that doesn't want the pipeline, and an Ontario government that doesn't want the carbon pricing. So once you've got those 2 big pieces, and they're not small, you can't say this court decision suddenly is making it unravel. I understand Alberta's decision to say, if this isn't going to work out, we're going to pull out, but it has no impact. The real test of this in Alberta is the Alberta election. And everyone's known that for months. Now, Paul is right, they can do all these things at the same time, but what they can't do is find a magic solution that will, wave a magic wand and this problem will go away. And you read a lot of that. It does not exist. I'd be wary of going to the Supreme Court, because if the Supreme Court refuses to hear the appeal, that basically says what was said in federal court stands.
And I would bet dollars and donuts they would uphold it. If you read that ruling, it's absolutely couched in language of previous Supreme Court rulings. It seems to me highly unlikely the court would see differently, but you never know. Look, this was in trouble. The grand bargain was in trouble before this court ruling. The court ruling arguably, makes things better for them by emphasizing the rule of law and keeping everybody sort of within that.
And suggesting solutions.
Yeah. So exactly. I don't think it's the setback that some people have said. But the grand bargain required that you handle each side of that bargain extremely well. And I wouldn't say that they've handled either the pipeline or the carbon pricing, the politics of either of those terribly well.
Okay, last word to you, then I'll take a break.
Particularly on the issue of trying to keep that pipeline completion on track, that ruling very clearly gets back to the heart of the matter, which is a lack of consultation on tankers. And when you talk about a path to yes, when you talk about how to get those people, there's always going to be a core that's opposed no matter what. But when you look at British Columbia, when you look at the rest of the country, when you say, you know what, if they could find a better way to reassure people on the issue of tankers off the West Coast, there is a real coming down in temperature in terms of the heat of that opposition. And I've said this all along, it is a tanker issue. So look, today we hear that boost to funding on spill response off the coast of BC is on hold. If I was government, I wouldn't do that. I'd go ahead and say, look, we're demonstrating what we need to do to get to a yes on that.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Andrew, Chantal, Shachi, and Paul will be back for another round of At Issue. We're going to check in with the other party. Stick around.
We certainly are one big, strong, united National Conservative Party.
I intend to run in the upcoming by-election here in Burnaby South.
How is the Conservative Party and the NDP doing after the summer break? What are their upcoming hurdles? There's a few of them. That's next on At Issue.
My grandfather, he was a salmon fisherman, so I was always watching him cleaning fish. And most people love the egg sac that's inside the fish. It's like caviar, but we fry it up and eat it. My name is Heather Campbell, and I'm an Inuit artist originally from Rigolet, Nunatsiavut, which is in northern Labrador. But I'm based here in Ottawa now. I've been here for almost 21 years. The piece that I have in the show is called Methyl Mercury, and it's a watercolor and pen and ink piece. So it was inspired by the Muskrat Falls Hydroelectric Dam project.
When the dam is built, this area will be flooded. Vegetation that's underwater will release methyl mercury as it decomposes, contaminating the fish, seals, and birds that people downstream rely on for food.
It's a way of protesting this project, but it's also that connection that we have with missing and murdered Indigenous women. So the main figure is actually the Inuit sea goddess Nuliayuk, and she's female, of course. So half of her is a woman and the other half is a beluga. But this poison is grasping her neck. So there's that connection with violence against women, and also having women as sort of a symbol of that destruction and that invasion that we have on our lands right now. So part of the reason that people in our region are protesting this project is because a study has shown that the water that they're going to release from the dam will actually have methyl mercury in it. And methyl mercury is a neurotoxin, so we're afraid that this water is going to pollute the ecosystem that we rely on. At the same time that the protests were really ramping up in our region, it was around the same time that the trial was going on for the people that murdered Loretta Saunders. So she's from the same community that my family is based in right now, And I think that really hit home that the issue of missing and murdered Aboriginal women. And it was in the back of my mind at the same time that I was creating that piece. So it was hard to kind of separate the two. So I just, made something that kind of dealt with both issues. I want visitors to look at the piece and have not so much an intellectual reaction to it, but I want them to have an emotional reaction and say, oh my God, why is this happening? How is this happening in Canada in this day and age? I know that it's sort of a controversial image because it's also depicting violence against women, but I want them to have that feeling in their gut, that same feeling that we're feeling, that we're powerless against this giant project that's happening. We feel like we've got our hands tied behind our back, and I want them to get an idea of how that might feel.
Welcome back to our Supersized at Issue. Andrew, Chantal, Shachi, and Paul all with me this evening in Toronto. We've been talking about how the Liberals have been doing. Now let's talk about the other guys, the Conservatives and the NDP. So we're going to break it down between the four of you. Paul, let's start with what has been an unusual summer for the Conservatives, I think largely because of Maxime Bernier. Yeah. Has that damaged them in any way that we maybe don't see, or is it sort of unknown at this point?
I think it has reinforced a little bit of grumbling to the effect among Conservatives that Andrew Scheer is not running a real Conservative party. A little bit like what we heard in Ontario for Patrick Brown before he got hoisted out of that job. In practical terms, it probably isn't going to make much effect at all. The fundraising numbers that Maxime Bernier is bragging about are trivial compared to the Conservatives, which are the biggest fundraising party in the country. He drummed up a spokesperson who said on his behalf that they might be able to pull away as many as 3 MPs from the Conservative caucus. First of all, I'll believe it when it happens. Secondly, 3 is not a large number.
No.
I think it's a distraction on the scale of Belinda Stronach when she left Stephen Harper's Conservative Party before he became Prime Minister.
So what is the state of that party then heading into the fall? Because we are about a year out now.
Well, it's going to depend. I mean, it's an odd enterprise that Bernier has set up. I mean, usually when new parties start up, it's because you have a number of people of like mind, you have a compelling issue or agenda, you have a crisis point where this
like
has
the block we talked about,
where this has to be,
or the Reform Party,
or you have some monumental leader who everyone just follows around.
Right.
At this point, it's not clear that there's any of that involved here. It does appear at this point as being essentially a personality vehicle for Maxime Bernier, and he's going to have to show in the weeks to come that it's something more than that they have actual policies, that they are able to raise funds, that they have candidates and supporters, and so far the jury is very out. If they're able to produce all that, I wouldn't necessarily underestimate them, because we're even seeing already in the polls some at least curiosity about it, and higher numbers than I expected, to be frank on that.
Really?
But don't also forget the X factor here, or the Max factor, which is angry Conservatives. There's always been about 1/3 of the base. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to go anywhere, but bristled under Stephen Harper for all those years, wanting to see the party go more to the right, and we might see a boil over. You can't underestimate that.
But Andrew Scheer is no Stephen Harper, as I think you've all pointed out in various
and
columns.
A lot of those angry Conservatives are in the West, where the Conservatives can afford to lose votes.
Yeah. NDP, Jagmeet Singh, it doesn't seem like it's been a particularly good summer for him.
No, with a lot of popular incumbents announcing already that they're not running again when he would sorely need them, and the impression that he's not getting through. 2 things. If there were a leadership review vote this fall, I believe he would lose it. And the dominant feeling that I've picked up, it's high in Quebec, but not only there, it's not buyer's remorse, it's seller's remorse over having let go Thomas Mulcair. At a time when the Liberals are so vulnerable on their handling of the
He's going to
environment.
send you an email tonight.
Oh, he's walking on a cloud. I've seen him this week.
The interview with him on TV the other day.
You Democrats, I tried to stop you from dumping Mulcair, but you never listened.
Shachi, what do you make of where the NDP is?
All is not lost. Let's just remember we have written off politicians in the past, and they live to see another day. But let's be real. Look, this has not been a good rookie year for Jagmeet Singh.
No.
Look, the hand-wringing about what if he loses this by-election in Burnaby, I don't think that's going to happen. That is as solid an orange, I was about to say red, an orange seat as I've seen it. It used to be part of Sven Robinson's riding. Peter Julian had part of it for a long time. I don't see him losing it. What happens after, though? He has been out-Jagmeeted by Justin Trudeau. He is the left flank of the party has been so squeezed. They pulled that pharmacare piece out of the playbook. And so where does he go? How does he distinguish himself? And what is his articulated message on pipelines? These become the issues if he pulls it out.
You have 5 seconds on Jagmeet.
Usually when a party loses in trouble, you can sort of get MPs to talk about it reluctantly. These times, they'll take you aside. They'll grab you and say, I want to tell you about my feelings about Jagmeet Singh.
They ask you out for dinner. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We kicked off At Issue in Style. I appreciate it. Good news for all of you who love politics as much as we do. This is also a podcast, so if you want to hear all these smart people again, be sure to subscribe. You'll get extra content. And, of course, the main podcast in podcast form every week. iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/thenational. I'm so happy they're back. Still ahead on The National, our moment of the day, a bear in Byward. Perhaps he was shopping for the bare necessities, but really all this wildlife loose in Ottawa is becoming unbearable. Oh, more detail, fewer puns next.
First, though, a man who was a giant in Hollywood has died. You know, there's this cliched phrase, which sounds almost comical now. Women want him and men want to be him. Well, Burt Reynolds kind of was him, that guy, the quintessential old school movie star. Tonight, we look at his career and his legacy.
What could go wrong? Burt Reynolds.
That name was once basically a license to print money. He had his good looks, easy humor, and natural charisma. For a time, Burt Reynolds was the biggest star in the world. Action movies, gritty dramas, slapstick comedy. Yeah. He did it all, though it took a while for things to get going. But 1972's groundbreaking survival thriller, Deliverance, changed everything.
You don't beat it. Don't beat this river.
Reynolds became a huge star, and a string of hits followed, including 2 that became popular franchises, Smokey and the Bandit and The Cannonball Run. They cemented his reputation as a carefree celebrity playboy, larger than life, even becoming one of Norm Macdonald's signature characters on SNL years later.
Burt Reynolds, what are you doing here?
Sorry I'm late. I had to pick up my podium from the garage.
It was during a high point in his career Reynolds met the woman he called the love of his life, but was destined to lose, Sally Field.
I don't know. It was love at first sight. I mean, as soon as we got in the car, I thought, this little girl is for me.
Hollywood changed by the late 80s, and his star began to fade. But in 1997, he took a chance on an independent film about the glory days of LA's adult film industry, Boogie Nights.
Yep. Jack Warner, filmmaker.
Really?
Yeah.
It almost single-handedly resurrected his career, earning him a Golden Globe, an Oscar nomination, and thrusting him back into the limelight for another 2 decades. Burt Reynolds died today in hospital in Jupiter, Florida. He was 82.
The one thing about painting in the public like this are the conversations that you get to have with the community, the people just walking by and the questions you get asked, and I think it's really interesting how a mural like this can sort of just change the way someone experiences their environment.
We started this project last year with a pilot of four murals in the Beltline. This year we're expanding to 11. And really what we want to do is transform spaces in our community, promote the artists in our community and in Calgary in general. All the artists had to submit a proposal to us, just telling us what their art's about, kind of giving us a portfolio. And we had to make a really tough decision about choosing the 11 artists that we had for this year. We had 66 submissions this year.
We've participated in several other mural festivals across Canada and painting in Mexico as well. So it's nice to finally be able to get funding to do a nice big wall in our city. With our abstract designs, we just hope to bring positivity and color and some quality artwork to the street.
The great thing about this project is that we could choose any subject. So I decided to do my mural on bees. I chose colors that were more unnatural because bees come in contact with a lot of pesticides lately, and that's a main cause that's killing them off.
Just trying to capture, I guess, the pride of the Native culture and the diversity of our people, how powerful and strong the culture is becoming, and yeah, I'm here to showcase them. I'm excited. You know, everyone's going to see my work, and people probably recognize this design, so they're going to already know where it came from.
For me personally, what the biggest draw of murals is that they transform spaces, is that you can take a space that looks kind of unwanted, underused, maybe even a little bit kind of frightening, and you can turn it into something bright and beautiful. And the good thing about murals and public art is that it's for everybody. You don't have to pay to go into a gallery, you don't have to have it in a corporate boardroom, it's for everybody.
Welcome back. Tonight on The National, concern is growing in Syria over how far the government will go to regain control of Idlib province, the country's last major rebel stronghold. Today, the U.S. representative for Syria said there's, quote, lots of evidence that chemical weapons are being prepared in the region. The UN has warned of a potential bloodbath if there's an all-out assault. In Japan today, lots of work to be done. Crews are sifting through rubble, searching for survivors after yesterday's 6.6 magnitude quake and landslide on the island of Hokkaido. At least 9 people are confirmed dead and about 30 others are still missing. And right-wing conspiracy theorist Alex Jones has been banned from Twitter. The account for his website, InfoWars, has also been shut down. Twitter says it made the move after a series of tweets yesterday that were abusive and broke the rules, but it wouldn't say which tweets in particular were the worst offenders.
Now, as the nation's capital, Ottawa is always full of hungry political animals, myself included, but lately it's been having actually quite a time with actual wildlife. This is perhaps not surprising. Ottawa is a very green city along a mighty river, close to wilderness, but even by those standards, things are getting a little out of hand in tonight's moment. There was the bird's nest that delayed the setup of a music festival. They couldn't get the stage and the equipment in until they got it out. Then a moose was on the loose on a highway in the middle of the city. For those who've never seen a moose, well, they're a handful. But today, a new one, a large black bear shut down Ottawa's popular Byward Market. It was spotted at around 3 a.m. and before long, a police perimeter was set up. But they couldn't find it again for a while. Then there it was, hanging out in a tree behind a restaurant and acting pretty chill, actually, leading to a long stalemate until police tranquilized it so they could set him loose. So everybody wins, even him. He got a name out of the deal, the Byward Bear. Now, I'm not saying it's the reason I left Ottawa this morning, but as I left Ottawa this morning, I did see all this kerfuffle in the market. And what was remarkable to me was the number of people who had left their homes to go watch this unfold.
Yeah, well, you know, if I was there, I would have been shocked. I mean, as you know, I was born and raised in Ottawa, spent 20 years there. I've never seen a bear in the Byward market, and thank goodness for that too, because I can never remember what the right advice is. Like for black bears, you play dead or you don't play dead, or grizzly bears you play dead, or anyways, it's one of the two.
I feel like you're not going to live as long as me.
yeah. Well, I moved away 10 plus years ago, and I guess I dodged a bullet. That's the National for this Thursday, September 6th. Have a great night.
Night.